Aloha nerds, welcome back to the Solid Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. Alright, so I checked out the first two episodes of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, Season 1. And I mean, I couldn't wait till episode 3. I had to tell you about how good these first two episodes were. I'll be honest, so Walking Dead fans, I gave up on Walking Dead after Negan killed the lady who wore the zombie faces, the Whisperers. Yeah, after they defeated the Whisperers, I really gave up on Walking Dead. I felt like the show was essentially over the minute Rick blew up the bridge and was presumed dead. I felt like, look, he's the main character, he's the center of this show, and literally I felt without him, it really did feel like all the other characters were kind of spinning out of control and did not have a center. And maybe that was intentional, but I mean, I legitimately felt like everyone, like Walking Dead, just, I felt after they killed Glenn, I felt like the writing took a huge dive, and it became a lot of platitudes. It became a lot of dramatic speeches and obvious double meanings, and not even hidden meanings. Just like everything was some kind of like dramatic speech about the character and themes. I'm like, people just don't talk like this, man. I mean, you get one or two people who might, but like every single character is talking the same way. It just sounds really redundant. I could not keep up with that. And I don't mean any offense to the writers and the filmmakers and cast, you know, but that's just how I felt. I really felt like without Rick, the show just devolved into platitudes and redundancies. And that's why, even though I love Smallville, I gave up on season 10. I'm like, there's only so much I can watch of the same exact thing. I'm not really a diehard fan of anything, except maybe Marvel movies, except Marvel Sony. You know what I mean? And then I tried watching the Those of Us That Live pilot, where Rick comes back, and again, I felt like they tried to do this whole flashback that we've never seen before of Rick and Michonne having a date where they pretend they don't know each other. I just didn't feel it. I was just like, you know, it's not the actors. It's really not the actors. I think it's the writing. I don't think the heart was in the right place for that show. He cuts off his hand, which is in the comics, but as I've heard, that is a part of the Negan journey, and I really felt like, especially watching that episode, I felt like, no, you know what? This belonged in season 8, where it should have happened, or season 7, whichever season it was. That belonged there, because it really didn't make any sense for it to be happening where it was. It was just an event that they were holding on to. I just thought, no, this does not work here. It should have. Again, after killing Glenn, the audience reaction was so visceral and so emotional, and everyone was saying, oh, the violence is too much, even though literally in the episode before that, people were being lynched and horrifically murdered in all kinds of ways. But once it happened to Glenn, now it's a problem. Like, okay, what about the actor who played Everybody Hates Chris when he horrifically died? And then they pulled out that frickin' head on Talking Dead. Was that not horrifying? But now it's happening to Glenn, and now it's horrifying. You know, I'm like, get out of here. But they reduced the violence so much, and it became much more of the Talking Dead instead of the Walking Dead. And I just couldn't keep up. I was just like, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for a zombie show with zombies in it. You know what I mean? Not where the people that are alive are droning on so much. I feel like I'm watching a zombie talk. Kind of like me. Ooh. Sizzle. But, you know, that's just my feelings. And I don't mean offense to any of these people. That's just how I felt I was experiencing the show. And like I said, even Those of Us Who Live, or what it was called, that pilot just didn't do it for me. Even though it was wonderful to see Terry O'Quinn again from Lost. Huge fan of Lost. It just didn't hold water. So, but that being said, Norman Reedus, Daryl Dixon, that caught my attention. You know what I mean? And I am interested in seeing the one with Negan and Maggie, but Daryl Dixon, I was like, okay, you know what? Here's a character who distinctly does not talk a lot, so they have to do something different with him, and he's just a fascinating character as he is, you know, without anything else. So watching the pilot of Daryl Dixon was like, yes, it was like a true return to me for what The Walking Dead should be, which is relatable, post-apocalyptic adventure. You know what I mean? I think that was the magic of everything leading up to Glenn's death. I think really the show fell apart with the Negan group because despite what violence was promised, it was never delivered. And so it was kind of like we get this huge introduction with the death of Abraham and Glenn, and then all of a sudden you're not that bad of a guy afterward. And it also feels like they're doing that specifically to set up Negan being alive later so he can have his heroic arc. But it's just like, that really doesn't work. Like, if you're going to start off with him being that hardcore, then you have to stay that hardcore, stay the course, no matter what the audience says, because that's what you're promising. And the audience will forgive you as long as the story gets where it needs to go. But if you immediately defang your lion and then you don't cut off Rick's hand on the episode it should happen, then it just turns Negan from a guy who keeps his word to a guy who does not keep his word. And so, not interesting. So, but again, that's what leads to endless talking. Just endless talking. It's like, no, stop it. No acting can make this talking interesting. It doesn't matter what the actor does. If you promise a certain type of character and that's not the character he is, then it immediately loses power for me. But seeing Daryl Dixon, seeing Norman Reedus as the main character, the first episode, again, perfect return to everything I loved about Walking Dead. Daryl Dixon's on an adventure. He shows up in France, doesn't know how he got there. We get this amazing tourist footage of pictures I've seen of France. Like, wow, okay. There's nobody here quite conveniently. I mean, not even like a broken down car or some skeleton with a backpack. Nothing. Just beautiful scenic shots of France. Okay. That's fine with me. I don't care. Because as long as you get to somewhere that looks post-apocalyptic, I'll accept your tourist shots because they're beautiful. And they do. Like, the first episode, I thought, was so awesome that we build up to, these little grifters who they pretend to need Daryl's help and then they betray him. And then another group shows up and messes things up even further. Because I was just like, oh no, don't make this a friendly group that Daryl joins now. This feels awkward. This feels weird. And then when it's a young lady and an old man, and the old man has a massive beard, and he immediately upon betraying Daryl, the old man pulls off his beard and throws away his cane, and I'm fine. I was like, yes, there we go. Now I'm having fun again. You know what I mean? And then. What happens when Daryl meets up with the Coven of Nuns, and I've seen this year. Hopefully, the review is out by the time this review is out. I saw Immaculate earlier this year, and that was great. And it was literally, I think, almost the same. I think it was in Italy, but similar location, similar building, similar idea. Coven of Nuns. I thought once we got there, and it got a little bit weird, but immediately we went back to the action and adventure that I would expect. And Daryl, again, his true character, he's not a speech giver, so he's not wasting anyone's time. And I thought this was a perfect way to get me back into watching Walking Dead, which actually I had restarted watching. I love seasons 1 through the first episode of season 7, where I feel the show stays consistent in everything it promises. And this was that. I thought that first episode, you totally brought me back. It was like season 5. I love season 5 when everyone is in survival mode and no one really knows where they're going to go yet. They haven't been to Alexandria. They haven't done with anything with the three towns. They're just trying to survive. That was the zombie show I'd been waiting for in so many ways. Season 5 of The Walking Dead. I love season 4 of Fear the Walking Dead. I'll say this, if you have not watched any Walking Dead, season 4 of Fear the Walking Dead is 100% my favorite zombie season of anything. I'll put it up there like Kingdom. Kingdom was great. Fear the Walking Dead season 4 right here. I still need to watch season 2 of Kingdom though. But yeah, man, just to have Daryl lead the charge, and he's on his own, so we don't have anybody else, was really cool. I thought I would be just as happy if it was some kind of flashback to his younger days before The Walking Dead, just because he's that kind of character where even though he has Merle as an older brother, he clearly has his own way of thinking. And to see him think and to see him work things out and figure things out, and to see him, watching him grow across The Walking Dead from being the brother of Merle to really being himself, finding out who he is. And he found out who he is through Rick. You know, when he sees Rick being the leader, and this is what I say is the strength of Rick as a lead character. The whole notion of what is a leader is so important. One of the themes of The Walking Dead that I love is what is a leader? How do you define leadership? And that theme is expressed through the Rick and Shane relationship. Because Shane is the paternal, reactive leader who will take the bull by the horns. As soon as something needs to happen, he'll do it. Well, Rick is more of a diplomatic leader. He will try every which way not to have to engage that bull if he doesn't need to. And we see the consequences of those two ways of being. That really the right leadership is some proper mix of the two. But where that lies can only be told through time. But one of the key episodes that represents that theme is when in season 2 they're staying at the farm and they discover that barn on Herschel's farm is full of zombies. It's full of walkers. And Shane decides to bust it open and start killing every single walker, even though they know that even though Herschel's clearly out of touch with the moment, that Herschel believes that they're still alive and that they're just sick. And so while Shane is he's still kind of right. He's still got the right idea. And the way he goes about it is so aggressive and so brutal. And it only further turns Herschel away from him, being able to see him as someone he can follow as a leader. And the sad tragedy is that once they've killed most of the walkers, the last walker that walks out is Carol's daughter, who was missing for the whole season that they've been looking for. Literally, Daryl got shot in the head because he came all messed up out of the woods looking for her and didn't find anything, but he just came out so messed up that Andrea, who became an increasingly worse written character over the 3 seasons she's in the show, great actress, terrible writing. I'm sorry, I hated how she changed. She went from a very smart character in her first episode to being a very dumb character in season 3, which I'm just like, that is not Frida from Blink Twice. That is just dumb blonde shit. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. Governor's clearly creepy. Get out of here. But anyway, but when we get to that last walker walking out and it's Carol's daughter, all of a sudden Shane can't pull the trigger. You know, he's so mixed with emotion, and the truth is that's kind of the core of his character being exposed, where yes, he is active, he takes the bull by the horns, but it's a purely emotional reaction, and that has its limitations. And in that moment, Rick realizes that no one else will shoot her, and that he has to make the choice, because he is actually the leader. It's what he's been calling himself, but he also knows something needs to be done in this moment. And so while Shane, for all of his talk, can't actually do the thing, he says needs to be done in that moment. That's when Rick reveals, I am the guy who will pull the trigger when it has to be done. And that's really the defining character of leadership, is that, and I learned this also in Beast Wars. I loved that cartoon growing up, but one of the very first issues of that show, in the first 2 episodes, is the band of characters surrounding the leaders don't agree with the leader. In when the Predacons have the Maximals cornered in that first episode, and Optimus Primal tries to tell Rat Trap, hey, you run down into the valley and draw their fire, so that, and he doesn't tell him so that I can fly up and get them, but he's telling him what to do. And Rat Trap is no, I'm not going to draw their fire, you're crazy, I'm gonna die. And because he refuses, Optimus has to take flight and then draw the fire himself, and then he just gets shot. And Rat Trap says, I told you that's what would happen. And afterward, Optimus explains, no, if you had drawn their fire while staying in cover, I didn't tell you to just get yourself killed. If you'd drawn their fire, I would have been able to provide you better cover fire, since I have the bigger guns and the ability to fly. But because you didn't listen, it compromised our entire group. But Optimus did what needed to be done because his people wouldn't follow him. And for a Saturday morning cartoon, I think that's a very good example of trying to define to kids what is leadership. And the leader has to be the one who, if no one else will do it, he has to be willing to do it. Because you are the example to the rest of the group. If you don't do it, why should anyone else do it? And that's just the truth of leadership. And so that's what Rick is. And what I think is beautiful is that theme is subtly carried across with Daryl, where later on in the show, in The Walking Dead, there's another, I forget who it is, there's another character who has to be killed because they become a zombie. And Rick is going to do it, but you see his hesitation. He's done with killing friends. And Daryl decides to do it. And Rick looks at him, and Daryl says, you don't have to take all the hits. You don't have to do all the killing. And that is just a sign that Daryl understands Rick. He understands where Rick is coming from, and he's with him, and he's supporting him, and he's willing to do the thing that needs to be done. The example set by Rick, right? So that's where a leader can inspire others by example, and Daryl comes up as someone inspired, and who also takes the lead as is necessary. And that theme is carried over again into Daryl Dixon when we get into the end of episode 1 of Daryl Dixon, where essentially the nuns give him this mission that he should transport this kid to some friends that the nuns know that are in Paris. And this is not something Daryl wants to do, but he does believe it's an opportunity for him to get back home, back to America where his friends are. So he reluctantly accepts. But what I really love in episode 2 is that now he's on this mission, and they run into this group of kids. It's kind of an adorable post-apocalyptic adventure. And there's a situation where they need to go get supplies, but the place that they got to get supplies from is guarded by a very scary man with guns. And this is a situation where Daryl realizes, okay, I need to take the lead then. I will take the lead and go help you get these supplies. And so it's not stated. Daryl's not the guy who's going to give a speech about, well, leadership is this. But the fact that he takes that opportunity to take charge and say, I will take care of the situation because it will help everybody, including me. He does have a selfish reason, but he is trying to help everybody, but he takes charge as Rick would have done. So I just like that this carryover, it's subtle, it's in the thematic framework of the character, but it's still there in Daryl, and that's why I was fascinated by him as a character to watch this show, because I'm like, this is the only guy who stood by Rick's side from a very early point. And even though he may have disagreed with Rick at certain times, he was always the number one guy to go, okay, you know what? If it's got to be done, it's got to be done. And I just really love that angle. And I also love that our main nun, I didn't do any Googling. I don't know the actress's name. She looks familiar. But the actress who plays the main nun that Daryl interacts with is fantastic. And not only that, but okay, another thing that's been the zombie show I've always been waiting for is watching the process of society go from normal to zombie apocalypse. I think a lot of the zombie movie tropes since 28 Days Later has been to copy 28 Days Later and essentially have the transformation happen overnight. The main character doesn't technically experience it, and we're just in it. And it's fine, it's fine. You tell your zombie movie how you want to tell it, but it gets redundant. And for me, I'm always fascinated, well, how did different people survive the zombie apocalypse? But I love that when we see the main nun, it's hinted at in the first episode that she wasn't always a nun. And I love that it starts off in Paris. So she used to live where the characters are going. So that also promises a lot. It starts off with her in Paris in 2010 or 9, before the zombie apocalypse officially started. Literally minutes before it starts. You see her partying, you see her grifting, stealing things from people, taking drugs, partying her head off in a club. And then when she goes out on the streets and she's having a cigarette, all of a sudden she sees a zombie attack. She can't tell that it's a zombie attack, but it's scary, and she runs away from it. And then she tries to take a train, and then on the train is a zombie attack, and then zombies start to appear, and then she goes up to the street, and the world is starting to get more and more chaotic. And luckily a friend comes by and drives her away, and that's the opening of the second episode. And I loved it. We get this wonderful flashback storyline in episode 2 about what she experienced as society went to zombie hell. And that's something I've been waiting for. And the experience of it was so well directed, so well shot, very perfectly written and acted by everybody, including the zombie actors, top notch. This is what I've been waiting for. All of Us Are Dead. I really liked that show, the first half of it in particular. The second half went a little too fantasy for me, but the first half gave me exactly that full. This was from the school's perspective, like a school of students. How would students survive a zombie apocalypse as they watch the world turn? And that's the first 3 episodes of All of Us Are Dead, which I highly recommend. Or like Black Summer, which gives us kind of just the tail end, like the zombie apocalypse has started, but not all of society has crumbled yet, and you're just seeing people sort of struggle to get away from the zombies as it gets worse and worse. I loved the first season of Black Summer. This is another one I got to get through the second season of, but season 2 they did some weird editing up front, so I just have to have the time to commit, because the brain work to figure out what they're doing is crazy. They really, I don't know what they were doing with the editing. I just tell that shit straightforward, please. I don't know what you were doing, but there's too much non-linear editing for me. But I just love stories. I love that angle. Shaun of the Dead also sort of skips time, but we do experience Shaun learning all the rules of the zombies in Shaun of the Dead. So I really love that part of the storytelling of zombies, of people learning how it all works. So to see this whole flashback storyline, which I won't spoil the rest of it, and even though I basically spoiled the beginning, hey, if you got Netflix and you haven't watched it, just watch it. You'll see the experience for yourself, and I'm telling you, that's the zombie show I've been waiting for. I did have something in the works where I was writing, it never came to fruition, but basically where that was an entire show or an entire movie. But I loved its presentation, and also being in Paris, so it's somewhere else. It's a different country, a different language, so you're just seeing a unique perspective on it. Again, that's what I like about zombies. You can kind of see pandemics, you can kind of see people in trouble and how they deal with it differently in different places. So really love the second episode. Like I said, it does carry over themes of leadership, but it also really gave a wonderful subplot, which was the flashback storyline of our main nun character and her journey that essentially connects back to the first episode without doing it directly. But it's direct, but it's not like it doesn't literally connect back to the first episode. We just see how she ends up with the Coven of Nuns, and I really like how that all pulled together. So that's what I got to say on the first 2 episodes of Daryl Dixon. If I really like where it's going beyond this, I'll come back and review the other 4 episodes of season 1. And then if I like that and I get season 2, I'll talk about it some more. So thank you for watching, and aloha, nerds.